morning, Eileen. Today we have Miss Eileen Chia. She's one of the next generations of leaders at the Singapore Red Cross. I'm very happy to have her with me. She is the Assistant Secretary General Corporate representing Singapore Red Cross. So a very good morning to you. Um, we
Morning,
will
Cindy.
just Thank you. We'll just get straight into it. So in today's module, we are very pleased to have you to talk about, and share your insights about competition. In specifically, who are your competitors, that's relevant to Singapore Red Cross, and who are your indirect competitors, and how do you go about framing them as your direct and indirect competitors?
Thank you for that question. We have multiple causes. I think throughout this series, your students might have already heard from my different colleagues who have been talking about the different causes. So you can imagine that we would have competitors and partners from different industries. So what I'll do is I'll focus this discussion on fundraising and the charity sector is very buoyant in Singapore, and charities compete for funding. So it's a constant challenge to attract donations in the social sector with more than 2,000 charities. And so I suppose we can count the charities that serve similar beneficiaries or client groups as direct competitors, and then all others as indirect. And by that, I mean social service agencies that care for seniors, persons with disabilities, disadvantaged families, children and youth at risk, and migrant workers. But of course, another way to define competitors is to look at the size of the charity, how many staff and volunteers they have, and what's their operating expenditure. So it depends on the lens we wear and the perspective that we take.
That's really good. A very generic and also a very strategic way of identifying your direct and indirect competitors based on, the core offerings Singapore Red Cross have in the marketplace. So in my course, in this particular module, we talked about teaching students how to do a strategic map, that's in theory, of their competitors, based on a couple of attributes or criteria. Now, obviously, in practice, things move pretty quick and fast paced, right? And then people always have the concept that, oh, social service is a bit different now. It's probably operate like any other corporate companies, except that it's in the social service sector. So I'm just curious that if there is a way or framework you use to perhaps project or anticipate your competitor's next move, and how do you go about anticipating that step?
Because resources are finite, so it is important that for us charities, we do not end up duplicating the services on the ground or serve neighborhoods or segments that are already being cared for by other groups. But while it's very important that we have an eye and an ear out on the ground and be very aware of what the other social service agencies are doing, a lot of times, instead of competing with them, we partner up with them and we get into meaningful collaborations that would leverage the strengths of the different charities involved. So it is really important that we stay agile and dynamic. And we also respond to evolving challenges. So other than actually doing media monitoring, social listening, keeping an eye out on fantastic fundraising campaigns, very compelling social content by the other charities, not just in Singapore, but also overseas, things that we can learn from. It allows us to then be able to also adapt our own marketing campaigns, adapt our own fundraising campaigns to be able to broaden the outreach and to connect more deeply with different stakeholders. So yeah, we definitely keep an eye out on best practices, and we get into platforms actually. We get into platforms like conferences and sharing sessions with the different charities, because the ultimate aim, right, is not compete for the same charity dollar, but to actually work together to amplify the fundraising profession, because it can be very lonely trying to raise funds. Some people call fundraisers professional beggars, but it is actually a profession, and it is not easy to be a very good fundraiser, and they are very sought after fundraisers. So when you get to a place where you professionalize, and you are able to strategize fundraising, you are able to maximize digital fundraising opportunities, you're able to create beautiful campaigns, you're able to steward the funds. We're able to create meaningful impact reports, to secure repeat donations, things like that. What we want to do is to share, learning points like that with fellow charities in Singapore as well as internationally. The Red Cross has a presence in 192 countries. Even though all of us are autonomous, what we do is we have regular sharing sessions. We call them Skillshare. So we have different national societies, Singapore, Korea, Thailand, Japan. We would get together and we would share some of these best practices, interesting campaigns, so that eventually we elevate the profession. We multiply the funds that can be raised for charities when we collaborate and do a great job out there. Instead of competing for the same dollar, what we want to do is to broaden the market. When all of us do well together, the market can be bigger and the pies can get bigger for everyone.
Yeah, no, that's a really great mindset. And I can't help but wonder, I mean, in fact, your CEO did mention that, rather than compete, they prefers to collaborate. And I can't help but wonder if that is sort of, the norm, more normative industry practice in social sector. But, if I were to think about, competitors in the strictest sense, I mean, obviously, that philosophy is fantastic, and I think more corporate companies are doing that. So, but when you collaborate with a competitor, some is with a small c, small collaboration, some with a big collaboration. How would you determine which competitors are good to I know you mentioned that, like, are easy to work with, or and being in competition is a choice, right? Sometimes you might compete on certain things, and sometimes you might choose to collaborate. So I'm just curious, how you make those decisions, when to be competitors, when not to be, because you can't be, I suppose, unless you're working for the same organization all the time, there will be time where you have to compete. And how do you negotiate that, knowing that in the future this organization might be a collaborator down the track?
Sure. The philosophy is important, because our philosophy is that we have to forge stronger and more diverse coalitions. So we're very serious about rallying partners in the social sector, even in public agencies, as well as the business community, as what we like to call one united force for humanity. So with a very broad humanitarian mission, the Red Cross is actually uniquely positioned to contribute as a coordinator as well as an integrator for the community. So I have a couple of examples. If we take the Nepal earthquake, we managed to, as lead coordinating agency in Singapore, raise millions of dollars. Now, as an organization, I have limited feet on the ground in Nepal, because this is not Singapore that we're talking about. So we've had to work with multiple partners. Eventually, we identified some 70 partners to build a plethora of projects. So with different partners, we were building schools, we were building community halls. Some were complete rebuilding projects, some were changing the purpose of different infrastructure. So in an instance like this, we become a major coordinator. Some of the charities would see us as a funder, because I have stewarded the funds. I now need to project manage the funds and identify on-ground partners to build the projects, and we do the monitoring and the evaluation and the disbursement. So in an instance like this, we might be fellow charities, but I have taken the hat of a funder, and as a funder, I still need to do the monitoring and evaluation so that we can create impact reports for the donors, So in an instance like this, it will be all of us working together for one common cause. And in a partnership like this, there's beauty in it because we were able to negotiate, the building materials so that it's efficient across all the partners. We were able to get into agreements to bring down the prices of certain building materials because we were able to buy on economies of scale. So in an instance like this, we become a coordinator and an integrator and even a funder. And in Singapore, closer to home, we work with different agencies to facilitate our last mile assistance. So when migrant workers get injured in Singapore and they need to get home, we actually work with the Red Cross National Society in their home countries to arrange a journey from here in Singapore to their home country. And when they reach the airport, our colleagues from the National Society from that country would facilitate the journey all the way home. So, and sometimes it would be a 3-hour bus ride, then followed by, having to cross a river, etc. So we would do that so that we are able to get the migrant worker who is injured all the way home. And some of these are only possible because we collaborate with the on-ground partners. We collaborate closely with the agencies that take care of migrant workers here in Singapore because they are big players out there and we are able to use our network. So in selecting partners to work with, it is always what value we can bring on board and what value they can bring on board because they might have the direct beneficiaries, we might have the network, and then we partner out. So it's really always what every agency brings on board. It might be funding, it might be networks, it might even be the direct clientele. Yeah, so it all depends.
Brilliant. I mean, that gives us a lot more insights of how what will be seemingly independent, agencies that could be potential competitors, but once activated, as you elegantly put it, with a common cause, turns into collaborators. So with that, I'll finish this segment of the interview. So thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next segment.